Hi guys, so I'm talking about how to make money via market stands in France. And I would say that with les placiers, which is the person who places you in the morning before the market begins and before your customers turn up, it varies wildly between markets. So, for example, Saint-Giron market, which is one that I know very well and was my most frequented market that I would go to regularly on a Saturday morning, was quite an experience. So I ended up going there earlier and earlier as time went on. But at the beginning, because I didn't have my own regular spot, so you have all the people that have been going to the market for kind of years and years and years. Some of them up to 40 years they've been doing it, and they have their spot, and that's where they always have their spot. Okay, got that? And then you've got people like me that just starting up, and you have to find the gaps in the market to be put. And you can do that yourself a bit beforehand, or the placier will just basically walk you around the whole market with all the other newbies and find you a spot. And you have to try and basically elbow your way in there so that you don't get in there last and get a really crappy spot right on the edges of the market where half the locals don't even come. So, in time, you get to know where are the good places in the market and where you'd like to actually have your spot, which works for you. For example, with me, there was one particular alleyway in Saint-Giron, which is a huge market, that I liked the best because it was less dark, because there were less trees to give shade. It was kind of a bit more open and spacious feeling. And when it gets really busy with tourists, the tourists aren't all crammed in and like blocked. And quite often when it's really hot, for example, the tourists, they just don't want to stop because they kind of almost feel overwhelmed by the situation and they just want to keep on walking. So being a little bit somewhere where it's more open can be beneficial. But quite often, if you are not selling food, then quite often your customers will come to you later in the market once they've bought their food and their things that they do regularly and weekly. They come back to you afterwards. Maybe they've dropped all their produce off in their car or their home and then they come back. Me and other people have found the same. So yeah, that was a bit crazy. Like basically, this placier in Saint-Giron, she walks really fast. She might as well be running, and she talks to people on the way around. Is that person off today? Are they coming? What do you think? What did you hear? Da di da di da. Can this spot be used? Kind of thing. And then she checks your sizeage and what space is there, and then she'll pace it out. So if you're 3 meters, then it's going to be easier to find a spot than if you're 5 meters long or 6 meters long, which some people are. Some people are 11 meters long if like you're selling Asian food snacks or whatever. They're really long with their big van and everything. So yeah, and if you're 2 meters or 1 meter, then it's even easier to get right into the center and like the core bit where everyone goes. So the smaller your stand at the beginning, the better, I would say. But because I'd bought that 3 meter parasol, I couldn't change my size. Yeah, being flexible is important. But then I went to Mirepas once just to try it out because it's quite a lot further. It's about an hour and 40 minutes away from where I live. But it's a really, really high populated town with tourists. And it's really popular. So I was told by someone who's been going there for years that I had to turn up before 6:30 in the morning. And basically it's first come, first served basis. So everyone sits there in the dark and everyone knows who's come first, who's come second, who's come third. And when the placier turns up later on at a more respectable hour, they then take people off and find spaces for you. And I didn't really know this was the case. I only did it once. Sorry, I'm flagging. they didn't like the paperwork that I showed them. For them, that wasn't really good enough, but they'd because I'd got there that morning with my daughter, that they would give me a spot. But in the future, they wanted me come with a special bit of paper from a specific company, and it had to be within 3 months dated, and I'd already been doing it for 3 months, so my URSAF paperwork, which I was giving, wasn't good enough. So anyway, very soon after that, I printed off the correct paperwork, and you know, if I ever needed to, I showed it to other market placiers. But Saint-Giron weren't bothered about that particular piece of paperwork. So yeah, Mirepoix is very populated. I was put right on the edge in a really awkward spot, and it's a very tight. All the streets are really tight, so it's hardcore. Putting your car up, setting up, then going to find a parking space, then coming back to your market stand. Bit of a nightmare, to be honest. A lot of hard work for not very much gain that day, even though it was still height of the season. And then, like for example, smaller markets like Salis du Salat here. The first time I tried to get a spot there at the very beginning, they turned me down. They said, because I did it through the official way, I did it on, first I tried to do it online, and I was like, no, I'll just turn up straight to the mairie, and actually it was not the police, but the other one, the gendarmerie, who organised it. I left a letter with them, and then I got a reply at home saying, there is enough people in our market selling clothes that we can't accept you at our market. And I was like, what? And then I talked to other people about this, and they said, oh, how ridiculous. You know, I talked to other people who sold clothes about this, and they said, no. Just come in the morning of the market and get a space. So that's what I did. I waited for the placier. He comes at 8 o'clock, and we went around, and he found me a spot, and up I erected all my things, and it was fine. And then I kept coming when it wasn't raining, and I ended up getting quite a good regular spot, so people knew where I was going to be. And then in the end, I just found that it was just such a small market and kind of an old population. I'd almost saturated the tourists and the young people, that it wasn't really worth it, and I decided to stick with the bigger Saint-Giron market on a Saturday. And I think I'd found other work, so it didn't really matter that I was not doing as many markets. Okay, I'll talk about how much markets are and foire next. See you soon.